It all started with a seemingly innocent swipe. Emily had been single for a while and decided to give online dating another shot. She downloaded a popular app and began browsing through profiles. One evening, she stumbled upon a profile that immediately caught her attention. The man, Mark, had a ruggedly handsome face and a charming smile. They matched instantly, and she received a message from him almost immediately. Mark's messages were intriguing. He seemed to know exactly what to say to keep Emily engaged. Their conversations flowed effortlessly, and Emily found herself eagerly looking forward to his messages. After a week of chatting, Mark suggested they meet in person. He proposed a quaint little cafe in the old part of town, which Emily found charming. The day of the date arrived, and Emily felt a mix of excitement and nervousness. She dressed carefully and arrived at the cafe early. The place was almost deserted, with just a few old-fashioned wooden tables and dim lighting. She found a seat by the window and waited. Time passed, but Mark didn't show up. Emily began to feel uneasy. She texted him, but there was no response. Just as she was about to leave, a shadow fell over her table. She looked up to see a man who looked exactly like Mark's profile picture, but there was something off about him. His eyes seemed hollow, and his skin was unnaturally pale. He sat down without a word, and the air around him felt cold. Emily tried to make small talk, but he remained silent, staring at her with those empty eyes. Feeling increasingly uncomfortable, Emily decided to leave. She stood up, but the man grabbed her wrist with an icy grip. "You shouldn't have come here," he whispered in a voice that sent chills down her spine. She wrenched her hand free and fled the cafe. Outside, she called a friend to come pick her up, not daring to look back. The next day, Emily tried to find Mark's profile on the dating app, but it was gone. She searched for any trace of him online, but found nothing. When she described the encounter to her friend, they decided to visit the cafe again. They spoke to the owner, who revealed a chilling truth. The cafe had been closed for years, and no one had been there the night Emily went. Emily couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. She deleted the dating app and tried to move on with her life, but strange things began happening. She would find objects in her apartment moved, and eerie whispers would wake her at night. One evening, she found a message written on her bathroom mirror in steam. "You shouldn't have come here." Terrified, Emily moved to a new apartment, hoping to escape whatever was haunting her. But the strange occurrences followed her. One night, she woke to find the same man standing at the foot of her bed, his hollow eyes staring into hers. She screamed, but he vanished into thin air. Desperate, Emily sought help from a psychic. The psychic told her that Mark had been a real person who had died tragically in a fire at the cafe years ago. His spirit had become trapped in the dating app, seeking out women who resembled the girlfriend who had betrayed him. Emily was his latest victim. The psychic performed a cleansing ritual, but the haunting only intensified. Emily began to see Mark's ghost everywhere, and she knew he would never leave her alone. She stopped using technology altogether, isolating herself in a remote cabin. But even there, she couldn't escape him. One stormy night, as lightning flashed outside, Emily saw his figure standing in the corner of the room. "You shouldn't have come here," he whispered once more. And then, everything went dark. Sara had always been cautious about online dating. After hearing countless horror stories, she made sure to take every precaution. She chose well-lit public places for her dates and always informed a friend of her whereabouts. But when she met David, she let her guard down. His profile was perfect, and their conversations were deeply engaging. David suggested they meet at a popular restaurant downtown. Sara agreed, excited to finally meet him in person. The evening went smoothly, and David was just as charming in real life as he had been online. They talked for hours, laughing and sharing stories. It felt like the beginning of something special. After dinner, David walked Sara to her car. They exchanged a shy kiss, and Sara felt a flutter of excitement. She watched him walk away before getting into her car. As she started the engine, she noticed something strange in her rearview mirror. A dark figure seemed to be standing at the edge of the parking lot, watching her. She blinked, and it was gone. Shaking off the eerie feeling, Sara drove home. That night, she had a series of disturbing dreams. In them, she was wandering through a dark, abandoned house, with David's voice calling her name from somewhere she couldn't reach. She woke up in a cold sweat, the dreams lingering in her mind. The next day, she tried to contact David, but his profile had vanished from the dating app. Confused, she searched for him online but found no trace. She reached out to the restaurant, but they had no record of a reservation under his name. It was as if David had never existed. Disturbed, Sara began to notice strange occurrences. Her phone would ring, but there would be only static on the other end. She received texts from unknown numbers, all saying the same thing. Remember me? Objects in her apartment were moved when she returned home, and she often felt a cold presence behind her. Determined to get to the bottom of this, Sara visited a private investigator. He agreed to help and started digging into David's background. What he found was horrifying. David had been a real person, but he had died in a car accident 5 years ago. The man Sara had met was using a dead man's identity. Sara's fear grew as the haunting continued. One night, she woke to find David standing at the foot of her bed, his eyes cold and lifeless. He leaned in close, whispering, "You should have stayed away." She screamed, but he vanished into the darkness. The investigator contacted Sara with more chilling news. The man she had met was a serial killer who preyed on women through dating apps. He would assume different identities and vanish after each kill. Sara was supposed to be his next victim, but for some reason he decided to torment her instead. Frightened for her life, Sara moved to a different city, changing her appearance and cutting ties with everyone she knew. But the haunting persisted. She received messages in her new home, the same chilling "remember me" that had plagued her before. One night, as she was unpacking boxes in her new apartment, she heard a knock on the door. Peering through the peephole, she saw David standing there, his face twisted in a sinister grin. "You can't escape me," he whispered through the door. Sara never opened the door, but the knocking continued. She moved again, but no matter where she went, David followed. The fear consumed her, and she became a recluse, living in constant terror of the man who had stolen her sense of safety. In the end, Sara realized she could never escape. David's ghost was bound to her, a sinister reminder of a date gone horribly wrong. And so, she lived the rest of her days in fear, always looking over her shoulder, knowing that he was always there, waiting. Anna was a hopeless romantic. She believed in love at first sight and fairy tale endings. When she found an old, beautifully crafted love letter at a flea market, she was enchanted. The letter was addressed to a woman named Clara and spoke of eternal love and a promise to meet under the full moon. Intrigued, Anna decided to find out more about the letter's origins. She researched the names mentioned in the letter and discovered that it had been written in the early 1900s by a man named William to his beloved Clara. Tragically, Clara had disappeared under mysterious circumstances, and William had died soon after, his heart broken. Anna's curiosity turned into an obsession as she felt a strange connection to the letter. One evening, Anna received a message on her dating app from a man named William. His profile picture was old-fashioned, and his bio was oddly poetic. Intrigued by the coincidence, she replied. William's messages were romantic and intense, and Anna found herself falling for him quickly. He suggested they meet at the same spot mentioned in the love letter, an old bridge in the park. The night of their date, Anna arrived at the bridge under the light of the full moon. The air was chilly, and a mist hung over the park. She waited for William, clutching the old love letter. Minutes turned into hours, but he never showed. Disappointed, She decided to leave, but as she turned, she saw a figure emerging from the mist. It was William, but his appearance was unnervingly spectral. His eyes were hollow, and his clothes seemed to belong to another era. He approached her slowly, his gaze fixed on the letter in her hand. "You found my letter," he whispered. Anna nodded, unable to speak. "Clara never came, and I've been waiting ever since." Realizing the gravity of the situation, Anna tried to back away, but William's ghostly figure moved closer. "You must fulfill the promise," he said, his voice echoing through the mist. "Join me, and we will be together forever." Terrified, Anna turned and ran, not stopping until she reached the safety of her home. The haunting began that night. Anna would hear whispers in the dark, and the temperature in her apartment would drop suddenly. She saw William's ghostly figure in mirrors and reflections, always watching her. She tried to destroy the letter, but it would reappear, undamaged, on her nightstand. Desperate, Anna sought the help of a historian who specialized in the paranormal. He explained that William's spirit was trapped in the letter, cursed to seek out Clara for eternity. By interacting with the letter and meeting at the bridge, Anna had inadvertently bound herself to the curse. The historian attempted a ritual to break the curse, but it only made things worse. William's ghost became more aggressive, appearing more frequently and physically interacting with objects in Anna's home. One night, she woke to find herself being dragged out of bed by an unseen force. "Fulfill the promise!" William's voice echoed in her ears. Anna knew she had to end this. She returned to the bridge with the letter, determined to confront William's ghost. As she stood there, the mist thickened, and William appeared. "Clara?" he asked, hope filling his hollow eyes. Anna held up the letter. "I'm not Clara, but I can help you find peace," she said, her voice trembling. William's face contorted with rage. "You promised!" he screamed, and the air around them grew frigid. Anna closed her eyes, reciting a prayer for peace and forgiveness. She felt a cold hand on her shoulder, but she continued. Slowly, the air warmed, and when she opened her eyes, William was gone. The letter crumbled to dust in her hand, and Anna felt a wave of relief. The haunting ceased, and she moved on with her life, but the experience left a permanent mark on her. She never used dating apps again and avoided anything related to the paranormal. Yet, every full moon, she would look out her window, half expecting to see William's ghostly figure, a reminder of a love that transcended death and a curse that almost claimed her.